And it ain't too
A huge battle over voting taking center stage in America. A fear-mongering Joe Biden smearing Republicans as racist and claiming democracy in America is under siege over states like Texas trying to pass election integrity laws.
The 21st century Jim Crow assault is real. It's unrelenting. And we're going to challenge it vigorously. Are you on the side of truth or lies, fact or fiction, justice or injustice, democracy or autocracy? That's what it's coming down to. Stand up for God's sake and help prevent this concerted effort to undermine our elections and the sacred right to vote. Have you no shame? We're facing the most significant test of our democracy since the Civil War.
Joe Biden's also calling for a federal takeover of elections and is promising to use his Department of Justice to go after the states. Now, keep in mind that while the president spews that kind of rhetoric, liberal fact checkers have found these Republican bills actually expand voting hours. But those facts don't matter to liberals in Texas. A group of showboating Democrats just skipping town in order to block Republicans there from passing these new voting bills. They're fashioning themselves as political martyrs, who, of course, fled to Washington, D.C. on a pair of private jets, without face masks and a case of beer. And while these Democrats soak up attention, Texas Governor Greg Abbott's promising to arrest them when they return.
That is not the way that Texans do things. I will continue calling special session after special session because overtime is going to continue until they step up to vote. Once they step back into the state of Texas, they will be arrested and brought to the Texas Capitol, and we will be conducting business.
So, Greg, you think they're going to slap the cuffs on these fleeing Democrats or not?
You know, at first, I was going to talk about that, but what Joe said today just upsets me. I mean, he is a pathological, shameless liar. He ran on being a unifier. And all he does is bank on racial discontent, right? He's like comparing this bill to the KKK and to Jim Crow. It's like all he does is foment racial conflict. And he claims that he's making a moral case for voting rights as if there are no voting rights. Every American has the right to vote except the left's favorite voting blocs, which are violent felons, illegal immigrants, and the dead. My theory is there's only one possibility of a true zombie uprising, and it's if corpses found out that they were voted for Joe Biden. But the only Republicans Democrats know of are evil. It started with Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was supposed to be the worst, right? He was Hitler. Then you got George Bush. He was, a warmonger. Then you had the other George Bush. He was a warmonger. Then you had John McCain, warmonger. Then you had Mitt Romney, who was going to put everybody back in chains, right? Then we're supposed to get the biggest, greatest existential risk in history out of Donald Trump. And now we're sold, that's a lie because he's gone. And now this is a bigger existential risk than Donald Trump. This is the worst thing since the Civil War. I'm beginning to think they're exaggerating.
What gives you that idea?
I don't know. I'm just looking forward to the next existential risk.
Judge Jeanine, I looked through the entire Texas voting bill today, and there is not one thing in there that restricts voting. Not one thing.
There isn't one thing in there that restricts voting. And if you think about it, they haven't brought one person before you to tell you that this person was not able to vote because of this. In fact, what they want to do is, remember when they expanded everything because there was a pandemic, they want to expand the pandemic. They want to keep the pandemic voting, and they want to expand that. And you know what really makes me crazy? What makes me crazy is you have these Texas legislators who make a decision that they're going to go to Washington, D.C. I mean, it's such an embarrassment to Texans. I mean, I know a lot of people from Texas. I love a lot of people in Texas, okay? The one thing they don't do is cut and run. The one thing they don't do is run to Daddy in Washington and say, Daddy, help us. We don't want to do our job. We want to federalize the election law. Who gave you that right? Get back to work. People voted for you to work on legislation. You tried to stop the regular session. They couldn't get anything passed. They know how to do it. And now they're doing it for the special sessions. These people are an embarrassment. Look at them. them. They look like they're going to camp. And I guarantee you there's Miller Lite on that plane.
There is Miller Lite because they probably had to pay for that. They didn't have to pay for the plane, so they got a charter plane.
So
but when they had to buy the beer,
paid for the plane?
Miller Lite.
Who paid for the plane?
Oh, obviously, the taxpayers.
All right, so how does it look right now, the Democrats fleeing to Washington? And I believe Kamala Harris is going to be meeting with these fleeing Democrats. I don't know when, but we will cover it here on the show. It can't look good.
Look, I don't know who paid for that plane. They'll have to
Soros?
find that out.
Soros
I
funded
think
jet.
when you think about Judge, I think you raise excellent points, and everyone's raised the right points around.
Oh, I like you. This is the first time we've been together.
Keep your hands off him.
But I think,
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I think
We've had that problem
fundamentally,
before.
I never had.
We have to ask the question, what do we want when we have an election? Now, to your point, during the pandemic, we made accommodations to make it easier for people to vote. I happen to think what you want in any election, and I've run in 5 elections, 6, I lost 1. I wish we could have come back and found more people to vote and make some of the claims that former President Trump is making. But I lost the election. I wanted more people to vote, and they didn't. More people voted this time, and it just turns out that Democrats won this time. Now, if we have a set of systems in place to create that and to encourage that and to validate that going forward, I think we should. Now, politics, too much theater. Traveling to D.C., I get the politics. I get the theater of the politics. We all engage a little of that to make our point. But I remind everybody, 60 federal and state courts denied these claims. There's been more scrutiny around this presidential race. Look, the guy that I wanted to win won, and I'm thankful. Had he lost, I would have accepted it and moved on. I think at some point, the body politic needs to accept that there was an election, President Biden won, and if we are serious about more people voting, let's put efforts forward and changes to election laws that allow more people to vote and not make it harder for people to vote. And whether Democrats are right or wrong, they believe that it's making it harder for people to vote.
Let me ask you a specific question.
Sure.
Where in the Texas bill does it make it harder for people to vote?
So I'd say 2 things, Jess, to answer your question. Number 1, we roll back some of the pandemic accommodations that were made to help more people, make it easier to vote.
Like what? What are they rolling back, and what does it do to make it harder for people to vote in Texas?
24-hour voting in Houston. It wasn't supposed to be allowed, and they did it in the 24.
So there's some specific things. Look, I don't. We can go line by line on the bill, but there's no doubt there are efforts that are different for the 2022 and 24 election if this passes.
But actually, if it is, so if you're saying they're rolling back, that's actually not true because they're adding more time to vote. Maybe they took away the 24-hour rule.
Yeah, they took away a temporary thing.
Way more hours on early voting.
Well, the thing is also, like, I think I'm not saying it's not a serious topic, but I think it's actually this is to be ridiculed and laughed at. Yeah. Because, okay, if nothing passes, the state reverts back to pre-2020.
Oh.
Okay? And so if that's
Somebody
the case,
read the packet.
then the Democrats are actually for restrictions.
Oh, right.
Because it would be pre-2020. There actually are new things in here. Another point, the Supreme Court just ruled, was it last week or the week before, that not a single person could be shown to have been harmed in Arizona when it came to voting restrictions. And so the Supreme Court said, no, if you can't show actual person who's been harmed, then you can't. That was your point there.
Right.
But also, the Texas Democrats really didn't think this through. They made arrangements for private jets, hotel rooms, they scheduled their TV interviews, but they did not have a communications meeting. They have simply no message at all. So they end up doing step 1, get on a plane, get some beer, take a lot of selfies. Step 2, leave that blank, let's fill that in later. And step 3, win the fight. They are trying to play power politics with no power.
No power.
There's no strategy. They need a Mitch McConnell who can calmly say, this is the goal that we want to get to. This is what we're going to be able to do. And then you message it and work backwards. Now they're like, well, we're going to stay in D.C. for an indeterminate period. Oh, please send more money so that we can stay in the hotels. And they're definitely making money off of this. They're fundraising like crazy.
Where are their masks?
26 days.
Exactly.
Where are their masks?
It's not only that, but they're going to be there for 26 days.
Yeah.
And because that's when this special session is ending. They're not going back before 20. Who's paying for this hotel? Democrats, Socialists of America?
Yeah, Harold.
Question.
Yeah.
Question. That was a question.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.